What if I told you that there was a drop bar shifter out there that worked with, you know, old school Dior 90s mountain bike stuff, and it also worked with rear derailleurs from Sensa, S-Ride, LT Woo, Microshift, and that it also worked with the latest 11-speed and 12-speed Ultegra from Shimano, that you could use it on 2x drivetrains, as well as, you know, the new trend of wide range 1xs from SRAM Eagle, and even the Shimano 1x group set. And what if I told you this same shifter required no batteries, no firmware upgrades, and you didn't need to use your phone to set it up? Well, my friends, that is what Project Uno is all about. If you missed my unboxing short, we've been collaborating with Soma and Diacomp to come out with a bar end shifter that will work with literally all the things. And the prototype just arrived. Here it is. It is a silver bar end shifter with a ratchet that sounds oh so nice. Today I'm going to test this out with various drivetrains from 2x to 1 range 1x. I've got my Crest Membora here up on the trainer, and we're gonna see if it works, what tweaks need to be made. Before we start messing with drivetrains, however, I feel like I have to back up a little bit to kind of explain why this is such a unique product, even though it doesn't look all that special. First off, back in the 9-speed era, we had great compatibility between road shifters and mountain bike components. That's right, the cable pull was the same. You could take any Shimano mountain bike rear derailleur and it would work with the road shifters. Into 10 and 11 speed, that broke apart for no apparent reason other than probably money. That is the first issue that this solves. It's going to reunite the drop bar with mountain bike components. The next dilemma is that at around 10 or 11 speed, the amount of cable pull needed to pull a rear derailleur across the rear cassette increased. All that to say is that because of the increased amount of cable pull necessary to move the derailleur across, if you had a friction shifter that worked with 9-speed, it would not work with 11 and 12 and 13. And that's why the Rivendell Silver Shifter won't work with SRAM Eagle. The barrel diameter isn't big enough to pull enough cable to make the Eagle derailleur work on all the cogs. Yes, there are various hacky things you can do, like filing down the shifter pod, using some kind of pulley system to increase the cable pull, or you can somehow increase the barrel diameter. Here I tried it with some Sugru and used a shifter pod from a Microshift shifter. And speaking of Microshift, yes, that product exists, and if you put it in friction, you can do all these things as well, but Microshift shifters don't have a ratchet. That's what this sound is here. Think of the ratchet as like micro indexing. I feel like that it just makes friction shifting just that much easier and more pleasant to use. This is my super hacky attempt at this at a larger barrel diameter bar end shifter, and this is the prototype. You can see it's a little bit rough. There's a Phillips screw here. This will probably be changed to a wing nut, but for the sake of reference, you can see how much larger the diameter has to be to pull the appropriate amount of cable. You can also see that the lever is a little bit longer to give you that leverage. Okay, hopefully that gave you guys enough backstory to see why this is kind of an interesting product. The Microshift 12-speed shifter does exist, but it's like the only one, and it's okay. To me, while serviceable, it doesn't feel that great because it doesn't have a ratchet and it's black, and I like shiny silver bits, so hence the Uno. So right now I've got my Crest set up back here. It's running a 2x system, and I'm using the Rivendell Silver Shifters, which are just amazing, by the way. If you don't think you'll ever do a mullet setup with a modern mountain bike rear derailleur, then just buy the Rivendell Silvers, period. But if you want that flexibility of going wide range 1x and just knowing that this one shifter will shift whatever you throw at it, then the Uno. So I'm going to hop on the Crest with the 2x and the Rivendell Silver Shifter just to get a baseline. Then I'll swap in the Uno shifter just to see how it feels with the same setup. And then we'll go crazy. We'll do the wide range 1x. All right, so I'm hopping on the Crest here. This is the position of the shifter when the rear derailleur is in its lowest gear, and that is the position when it's in its highest gear. And if you've never used the Rivendell Silver Shifter before, it's an absolute joy. I love the shape of the shifter, just really nice. I know some people get scared off by the bar end, but honestly, after a couple rides, it'll just become intuitive. Okay, now we got a sense of how the rib feels. I'm going to put on the Uno shifter and we're going to see if there's any kind of tangible difference. But also, I'm really kind of curious about at what angle the shifter will be at the various gears. All right, I've got the Uno installed and it was kind of interesting. There were a lot more changes that they had to do to the shifter pod. Aside from shaving material, and they had to make a whole separate piece to route the cable out, as well as machining a longer one of these things. And I can see why there's that Phillips head screw right now, because it's going to need a much longer screw to hold everything together. But now we're going to try it out. This is kind of exciting. This is the first ever shift of the Uno shifter ever, I believe. The beauty is, because it is a friction shifting system, there's no like derailleur adjustment. It's already adjusted. This is in the highest gear, so that's what the angle of the shifter looks like. And that is in the lowest gear. So you can see there is still like a lot more room to go, and that's gonna be more important when we shift things up to use the one range, one by. There's definitely a lot more lever to pull on. The ratchet feels really good. It's a little bit more angular of a lever than the rib shifter, which is more ergonomic. Still pretty dang good. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is swap this out to a wide range one by and do a drop bar mullet setup. I don't have a complete Eagle group set, so what we're gonna do is use a SRAM Eagle GX rear derailleur, and the cassette I'm gonna use is actually a 11-speed Shimano Dior 11-51. So one tooth over spec than the Eagle's supposed to take, and it's also a completely different component group. But again, because of the magic of friction, it should all work. And I think I'm going to put the Rivendell shifter back on just to show you guys kind of the limitations of 9-speed friction shifters. And then we'll put on the Uno and compare. All right, so I've swapped components around and I have put a one by setup on the crust. And can we just appreciate for a second the beauty of friction shifting here? We've got a GRX one by road crank, a SRAM Eagle GX mountain bike rear derailleur, and 11 to 51 tooth Dior cassette, completely mixing and matching group sets and road versus mountain groups, and it all plays together well because of the magic of friction shifting. I've got the Rivendell silver shifter here, and we're gonna see its limits. This is one of the reasons I wanted something like the Uno shifter to exist, because right now if we use a 9-speed shifter, it's just not working with these modern drivetrains. All right, let's get shifted. So despite Eagle GX having a clutch, this still works pretty well. I can nail individual shifts, or again, go through the cassette, or as much of the cassette as I can. So you can see I can still use a pretty light touch going through the gears. Doesn't require a whole lot of movement or force. And the ratchet's holding, despite the clutch, pretty well. Okay, so this is the derailleur in the highest gear, and I'm going to go through one by one into the lowest gears. And this is the lowest gear I can get into with the Rivendell silver shifter. So as you can see, I can almost get to the lowest gear, but it's just not pulling enough cable. I still have 2 more shifts that I'm just not hitting with the Riv silver shifter. Again, this is not the shifter's fault. It's because the demands of modern rear derailleurs just require more cable pull. Like I said, there are some mods and hacks to make this work. It does work, but it takes some time, more money, and just hacking things. Hence my desire for something like the Uno shifter. So what I'm going to do next is remove the silver shifter, install the Uno, and we'll see how far up the cassette it gets. Hopefully all the way. 10 minutes later, I've got the Uno on, so let's get on it. Exciting stuff here. All right. 2, 3, 4. And there you go. We are in the lowest gear. It has made it. Finally, a bar end friction shifter with a ratchet that'll do a wide range cassette. So far, I'm pretty impressed. There's definitely a couple things I'd want to refine, like the wing nut instead of the Phillips head screw. The lever is pretty flat. The rib shifters do have a little bit of a bend in them, so it's a nice little crook for your finger to rest. I don't know how much we can change. I can make that suggestion. Some of you have been asking about whether this is going to come out for Thummy, and you're in luck. It already exists. It does not work with Paul Thummies. It has its own mount. Because of that larger diameter, it does make it so that it probably won't work with aftermarket Thummies. You just have to get the complete Diacomp Thummy setup. And they only do have the Thummy for the right side. So you can't do it so you have a left and then you run it under the handlebar. There are some questions about whether the lever would run into the brake lever. So I'm going to take the crust with us to California, and I will be running a mullet setup, even though my heart is with 2x. I'm testing the 1x for the people. If you're interested in this shifter, let me know in the comments below. Again, this is a bit of a flyer of the project. I pitched it to Soma, and they said, hey, yeah, we can make that happen. They then reached out to Diacomp, and their engineers hacked something together, which is what I've got here. So I think that's pretty cool, and probably wouldn't be possible if I couldn't demonstrate there was some interest by number of subscribers on the channel, all that good stuff. If you want the shifter pod to happen, to make it to market, definitely let me know in the comments below. Share the video. We're not going to do a Kickstarter for it. It's probably just going to come out, but it would be nice to show them that there are some people interested. So if you like this content, consider supporting the channel by joining us on Patreon, hitting that subscribe button. That is free, or buying some merch from the merch shop. And as always, keep the supple side down.